All right, and I'll show you something that I'm working on, right? So this is on the right-hand side of the screen, is a data set that I'm collecting right now. And it is a data set that I'm scraping from this website. Sorry, this is now mixing things a little bit with ODCM, but I think that's fine. So this website, I mean, has a bunch of like amazing stuff if you're interested in the music industry. So it's like an employee of Spotify, and this guy does just like data whiz. And this is a classification of genres, by the way. And what they also have is a section on music albums that are being released by genre and by country. So in essence, I've been tracking this website since 1.5 years. And what that allows me to do is like a detailed look at how the music industry has been evolving. And I started collecting this in October 2019, and I didn't know Corona would be happening. But now this data set allows me to study how the supply of music, like what is being produced, changed as a result of COVID. That's a project I'm working on, and some of my thesis students too. That's, I think, like an amazing, like also motivation of why you should start getting data via web scraping, for example, because something may happen and that gives you like this unique cutting edge to what's going on. Well, all right. So I have this data, right? But the data collection goes on and on and on. And it's been going on for 1.5 years. And I keep on working on this project, right? But so it's like not that I get the data, I'm done, and then I prepare the data and then I analyze it. But I keep on collecting data while I'm already working on the data preparation and the analysis, right? So it's like a fluid process. It's not a linear process. It happens like at the very same time. How do I do this? Well, I do this with a workflow that I've developed. Is it this one? So this is the corresponding documentation of this data set. So what I do here is on my Git, by the way, next week, you're going to learn all about Git. So this looks maybe geek to you now, and you don't know really what it is. You're all going to learn this because this is the ultimate goal of this course, right? So I have developed a workflow to document this data. And well, I start with a README and I explain what that data is. By the way, I include like screenshots, how the website looked when I started this project. It's like very accessible. And I make like, detailed copies of this and I explain all of the data that I'm collecting. And here, if you've watched my YouTube videos, you kind of recognize that I also explain the kind of directory and file structure that I'm using for this, right? So I have a doc folder. It puts documentation here. Let me take a look at this doc folder right away. Where's this computer? It's here, right? So you got the doc folder, by the way. You will probably not be able to see it. So let me open it here. So I have this doc folder. And I have, well, I don't have so much in it, but I have like, the screenshots in there. Huh? And that's already a good start. I need to maximize my screen and go back. Ideally, I should have a README here too. Then I have a folder called raw data confidential. This is raw data that only I want to have access to. I only want to be the boss about my raw data because I'd probably violate like any kind of law by sharing this data, even if I'm not in Sweden. Huh? So I may violate these laws. So I want to keep that confidential. But I want to disclose this data to the public later so that other people can work on this data set too. Even if I don't want to release it to the public, I want to release it to my co-authors so that they can work on this, right? But I just don't want to dump them a big zip file with like stuff. I want to document it well so they kind of don't bug me with questions so that everything is self-documented. So I have written some source code. You may recognize this from like the videos that you may or may not have watched, right? So when you, and this is dprep, right? We use and write source code to convert input data, raw data, into a final data set. And what I'm doing here is I convert the web scrape data that I've done, that I've collected. I prepare this data in a way that I can share it with my co-authors and the public. That's kind of the workflow. Input, transformation, output, probably the most essential thing in this course for the weeks that we have done. You take something, you transform it, and you output it. And here I use it to get data. And yeah. So, but how do I do this? Well, there's an external scraper somewhere running, doing this data collection, right? And every day, this scraper is pushing the raw data to a server. I call this an S3 remote. S3 is the file server system of Amazon Web Services. Essentially, when you watch a Netflix video, it's like they use so-called S3 buckets to put the file there that you stream. And then your Netflix client, whether it's your TV or your phone or whatever, makes a connection to that S3 bucket and it streams the files from there. It's like an FTP server. It's like kind of a website, but then no website. It's just like for files. And it's extremely cool because like in AWS, you can like say, hey, I want this bucket to be available in like all geographic regions. And then suddenly you don't have any data connection issue and your stream works very well because AWS at like Netflix at the click of a button, well, they use scripts for that. They can make available certain shows in certain territories and save bandwidth, whatever, right? So I put my data there too. And I have a script to pull in this raw data as we speak. So the last time that I ran this, well, actually, I'll show you what I do. So now suppose my mission right now is to update this data set because my thesis students, they're kind of bugging me. They want an update to the data, rightfully so, right? So the first thing that I'm doing is I'm pulling in the new raw data that has been putting on the server. This is called get raw releases. And I'll actually, this is a file I've written. I'll actually show you how it looks. It's actually quite easy. So if you go and edit, it's just like this thing, AWS S3 sync. And it's synchronizing my bucket where I store my raw data with my confidential data folder. It's pulling this data from the EU region. By the way, I store my data always in the EU to be kind of safe, right? Because the EU has more strict privacy regulations than, let's say, the US. So I try to abide by these rules. And I include all raw JSON files that are pushed. I also push HTML files to the server, but I don't need them here. So I only get what I need. Even if the scraper crashes, even if the university burns down tomorrow, I still have that data in an S3 bucket safely backed up somewhere. So it's like super safe. So let me pull in this data. I could just double click on this, but what I'm doing here is I just run this get raw releases. I'm only refreshing one part of my data, .bat. And now it's running this AWS script and there's updates and it's pulling in those 500 megabytes of data. Done. If I run it again, nothing happens because I'm up to date, right? It reduces your footprint. You don't have to it kind of recognizes when it's done, right? But, this is the raw data and, we're not like really sure what's in this raw data and we want to clean it in a way. So I've written a script which cleans this. It's an R script because I love R and because this course is about R, right? So let's check it out what it does. Pre-clean releases, I call this. Let me increase my font size. How do I do this? See, view, zoom in. What? Oh, zoom out. What? Zoom in. I'll walk you through the script real quick. By the way, that script you can even access on the GitHub repository. Why don't we just do this, right? This is my internal script, but I've shared it with the world anyways. So we could very well just look at this on GitHub. So what do I do in this script, pre-clean releases? Well, kind of recognize, I use this data table package because I think it's so much better and faster with large data, right? So I'm reading in this data set. You already see some cool things that I'm doing. Like some of those, well, let me not get so much into detail, but I'm reading in this data. I'm cleaning it. I strip out like some of the characters because actually I'll show you on my computer, it's better. first thing that I'm doing, I'm running the script now. By the way, this is week 2 and week 3 stuff. So it's actually nice for you to see how these things go together. What I'm doing is I've specified a condition through which I only load the first 10,000 or 100,000 rows of my data. So it's like super fast. I can like prototype now without actually having to wait. This is how the raw data looks like. It shows, remember, these are music releases to Spotify. It shows like country code, you know, in which country it was released, the track ID, the artist ID, the rank, I don't know actually what it means, the names of the artist, the album name, right? Now I want to clean this. And data storage is extremely costly because I have collected this data for like almost like, you know, 1.5 years now. So the Spotify : track : if you repeat that like 1 billion times, that's going to cost you a lot of disk space. So I'm stripping this out. And what I'm also doing is like EC rank 10, I just retain the numbers. So I'm running this script to obtain a cleaner version. So let's look at how it looks now. So I have like rank looks very clean, but the date looks like not so common. It's like an integer, but it's not a date. So the next thing that I'm doing is I convert this into a better looking date. You know, all for my now I like kind of killed everything. So I'm rerunning everything. Let's take a look. What is this? Let me see. So some bug. So it is still here. Oh yeah, I need to load more rows in my data. Let me reload 2 million rows because my computer is quite fast. That's not a problem at all. And like this is the initialization observations. I was like still messing around and changing my data collection. So the key field that I want to use as a date is not populated here. Every noise date is NA, while actually I want this to be filled in. So I'm cleaning this here. Oh, sorry for that. Let me go back. So let me look at the raw data. Jesus. Okay, it's not there yet. So maybe let's load the first 6 million rows. Should also be reasonably fast, but no guarantee here. Yes, here we go. So let's wait just for it to be processed. And it's taking considerable time, but you should already feel the beauty of this, right? But just changing the number of rows in my data set, I can like make fast progress on my data set. Like one of my co-authors, he works with a big data set, and it takes forever to load. So sometimes this person just sits idly at the computer waiting for the data set for 10 minutes, and then you get distracted, you do something else, and then you have problems coming back to the project. So by prototyping on a small data set, and the script still runs, you can like make fast progress. So now it happens, right? This data set already looks much cleaner. I have the country code, I have track ID, I clipped out the strings, la-di-la-di-da. So you probably agree this looks way cleaner. Last thing that I'm doing is I'm changing the column order to make it look a little nicer. So now I start with the date, the country, the rank, and then I have those track IDs. That's a clean data set. And then I'm saving it. That's essentially all there is. Now I'm done prototyping, and well, actually I leave it like this for a second. So where does this make feature come in? Why are we using make today? Well, if you write make.n, well, let me show something else first. Sorry for that. So I've automated this workflow. Right now I'm walking through this manually, but I'm lazy and I have to do this a zillion times. And every time that I restart doing this, I forget how things were done. So I have specified a make file. And in this make file, I specified the rules how to do my data preparation. So what do I do here? First, I define a couple of directories. And then I define a rule called all. The first rule in this file will be executed when I run this file. And what I tell to this thing is like, well, what do I want to be built? Well, I want 2 data sets to be built. Every noise new release is full, and every noise new release is no titles. Actually, I generate 2 data sets for my students. one that is very greedy in terms of disk space. So I'm cleaning out all those character titles, like the artist names and the track names, and one with the full data. So those with limited disk space, they can read just the ID numbers. That's enough to do the research, right? But somebody who's interested in actually what the ID number corresponds to can use this other data set, same data set. And I don't have to like clean it with Excel. That's not how it is done. All right, and then this thing takes like, well, there's two things. First of all, it checks, well, is the data there? You know, it checks in the output directory, is the data there? If the data is there, nothing is done. It's like over. We don't need to do anything. If the data is not there, it kind of looks like, how do I actually like build this data set? And it screens this file for a rule. And then it figures out, well, the new release is full and the new release is no titles. There's actually a rule how to build it. And there are a couple of ingredients. The first ingredient, and the only ingredient, is actually this file, precreenreleases.r. This is the R script that I have written. We essentially tell this thing as well, to build these files, you need to have this file. It could also be a data set, for example. And if this data set is not present, then it looks for a rule on how to make this data set. So everything depends on each other. But here it's just the script file on which it depends. The nice thing really is, if I change the script file, this tool notices that and alerts me. It's like, hey, this file has changed. You better rerun this rule because otherwise your work is not up to date. And then separated with indentation characters, a tab, there is a little code snippet on how to run this rule. It could be like opening Python and running a particular file, but it could also just be like an R script to run. When I then look at this make thing, it realizes these data files that I want to be built are not built, and I can call make, and now it's just executing my code as we speak to release the new data set to the public. That's all. You know, it took me like 20-25 minutes to get there, but essentially updating my scraped data set without any involvement so much just boils down to clicking on get raw data releases to update my raw data, then going to my directory and typing make. That's all. And that is the power of make to me in this particular process. I have automated everything. And this is not even a complex data workflow. This is a very, very simple workflow, but it will grow complex over time. That's why you use this make utility at the very start of your project. Even if you've just like one code file, two code files that you want to like specify on how to execute, you use this tool. And as you develop your empirical research project, you kind of do more things and you extend. And it's over, it's done. And now I have my new updated data set in this release. See over here, this is the data set. It's been modified today. This is the new release data. But by the way, this is just the prototype. Gotcha. So the last thing that I want to do is like, I have verified my prototype code works on a small data set, but running this on the big data set takes like an hour. But I know the prototype worked. I maybe took a look at it. Now I can remove this prototyping condition from my script and just write make, sit back and relax and lock out and work on something else. And when it's done, it's going to be done and I can continue on my work. But that is like an optimal use of my time. I don't need to worry about this running of this workflow. One more thing, it maybe looks geeky opening this up in the terminal, but there is a terminal tab directly in RStudio that you can use to write these commands too, actually. Like if you write make n, that's kind of, make n means like, show me what you would run if I was gonna type make, but it just like doesn't do it. That's like the preview of what would be done. And if I type make, it's now building, but it's building in this other window right now. So I'm just like waiting for this. And that same kind of process I'm using let me just like stop sharing my screen for real quick. That same kind of process I use on other of my projects. May it be a data preparation or an analysis, you can automate anything and just be like done and over with it. All right. That's kind of how I use this. Oh, by the way, the chat like kind of was going crazy, but I kind of forgot to look at it. Sorry for that. All of my workflow is available on my GitHub. Not all, but many of them. So just check out my GitHub profile, github.com/manus. That's it. And what's public is public. And if you feel like, I'm sure you want to get access to more because you know I'm working on something, just ask me for it and I can do this. The size of those data sets were 12 gigabyte. That's another good question. No, the size of this whole project directory is 84 gigabyte. It's not even a big project. So the raw data for these new releases is 27 gigabytes. Each week, I collect about 500 megabyte of data. But the data set that ultimately comes out of this, well, I'm waiting for this. I don't know how big the size is, but probably I'm reducing this to I think I'm reducing this to 2 or 3 gigabyte only for students to work on. And it's still the same data, but because I cleaned it in an efficient way, stripping out characters that I don't need and stuff, it's like relatively small, right? But, it's still running, but, I can work on something else. So that's cool. Woo, alrighty. What do you think? What are your comments on this? Are you kind of getting the feeling of why this could be a powerful tool? And then we can actually look at this first tutorial that was assigned. Unless you need a break now. I don't know. How do you feel? Give me some intuition. Should I continue with? Yes, but it's still a lot of unknown R coding for me. Yeah, it is. But all you need to know, Lieke, is you've got some inputs. You got to do some transformation. You got to do some output. That's the basic thing. And if you could just create a new column, do mutate with dplyr or whatever, some easy thing that you can do, and that's it. You can use it already. All right. We'll be writing a makefile from scratch too, but let's first zoom in on the Tilburg Science Hub tutorial. All right.